For this hairstyle, we're going to bring you a really interesting transition. As you can see now, the hair grows straight forward and it's just laying flat. Normally, this client gets their hair cut once a week. This is grown out 3 weeks. What we're going to do on the top is we're going to layer the top. We're going to put a lot of texture in it, and we're going to stand it up, and it's going to have not a square flat top look, but more of a rounded spiky look because of the texture we're going to add. And then on the sides, we're going to blend, which are the toughest type of fades to do, 3/8 of an inch up and through here, down to a 1 finger to 2 finger width around the edges with a beard trimmer or a foil shaver. So we're going to have about 10, 11, 12 different lengths on the sides. So we're going to go through quite a few clipper blades and 3 different clippers to get that look. And then we're going to have to blend it, and we'll have to blend it here. So we want to see a shadow through here, but absolutely no lines. So again, this is going to be a really interesting hairstyle, so pay close attention because there's going to be a lot of steps to it. And but we're going to explain it thoroughly for you, and then at the end, we're going to get into the style. We're going to use a light gel or a styling cream to stand it all up, and then we're going to use a paste to get in there and mess it up and give it that textured look, and it'll stand up and it'll stay that way all day. For the top section of the haircut, we're going to use a scissor over fingers technique. I'm going to pull the hair straight up at 90 degrees because I want the front or the fringe to be the longest part of the haircut. We're going to take about a 1/2 inch off. I want to leave the length. I want to leave myself plenty of room to get in there and really texturize the hair good. When you're working with short hair and you're using a scissor over finger technique, you want to make sure that you take very small sections. You always want to have tension on the hair, so that way the hair is cut evenly. And I never like to release or drop the hair. So I'm using what you call a traveling guide. So the guide is always in my hand and I can always see it. My pinky is always balanced on the head, and that's what's creating the tension. And I'm taking a straight line through the top of the hair, getting my center guide. Then I'm going to comb it back forward. I'm going to pick it up on the right hand side, and I can see my guide underneath, and I can see my center guide. So I always have 1 or 2 guides that I'm cutting with. That way I never get lost on a haircut. So it's very important that you develop the hand dexterity with your tools, so you're not thinking about opening and closing the barber shears. You're just thinking about how you're picking up the hair and the shape of the haircut, and the rest comes natural. It takes time and practice to build the dexterity, but it's extremely important. And then when you're using this technique, you just kind of develop a rhythm, and you just keep that pace going all the way through. Because what happens is if you try to slow down or speed up and you're not cutting with your natural pace, or you're trying to mimic what you've seen somebody else do, you're not gonna get a quality haircut. So very small sections. The shorter the hair, the smaller your sections need to be. Otherwise, you're going to see scissor marks in the haircut. And then we're going to take one more section on the other side. Okay, you're going to see 2 guides. You're going to see your center guide, and you're going to see the guide from the round of the head area. And then we just want to double check the front. Make sure I didn't over direct it back too far. Again, as part of the consultation, we determined that this client wanted his hair longer in front because he's going to stand it all straight up. So this is going to be one of the exceptions to the rule where you don't want the fade higher than the bangs. In this case, this is a little bit more of a disconnected haircut in the front. So if you look from the sides here, the fade from his last haircut is already higher than the bangs. So if a customer is wearing their hair straight forward and wearing it down, the haircut's going to be completely out of balance. But because of the way that we're going to style it and stand it all straight up, the fade is going to match where the hair is standing up. The fade is not going to look or appear higher than the bangs. So when you're dealing with some sort of a disconnection or over direction in the front, that is the exception to the rule of not taking the fade up higher than the bangs. So for the next step, we're going to come back and we're going to cut using a scissor over comb technique with a blending shear and put a lot of texture into the thick hair on top. So we've combed the hair on top in the direction that it grows. Even though he's not styling it this way, this is going to be the easiest way to pick it up with the comb. So we're going to pick it up with the comb, and normally when you texturize hair, you just stay on the top third and make one cut. But what we're going to do is, this client likes a lot of texture in his hair, we're going to start halfway down, and we're going to close the scissor 3 or 4 times in the same section, but as we're doing that, we're raising the comb up, so we're not cutting in the same spot. If we cut in the same spot, we're going to cut length, but as long as we move the comb and lift the comb as we're closing that scissor, when you pick the hair up, you can see how even it is, but how much texture is in the hair. So we're going to follow that all the way through the top. And in order to get the hair to stand up, the way this client likes his hair to stand up, we have to take a lot of that thickness out and put a lot of texture in. So to balance the hair, what I do is I hold the shear underneath the comb, and then I regrip the hair with the comb as I move my way through across the top of the head. So the thicker the hair, the more sections you're going to take. The thinner the hair, the less sections you're going to take. I'm using a wider tooth blending shear. This is actually a 23 tooth blending shear, so this is allowing me to close the scissor so many times without taking length. We're not taking as much hair off. You can kind of see it as it falls off. We're going to work our way all the way to the back. And we're actually rounding it a little bit in the corners. The front we're keeping square, but the back half we're gonna round it. The client does not like it to look square or like a flat top. And then we're just going to come through the front one more time. It still looks a little heavy to me. And I want to check the corner here. Now there's a little bit of a corner, which means there's a little bit of a weight line there. I don't want to have that. So I'm going to come in at an angle. And blend that into the front. And then we'll do the same on the opposite side as well. And the other thing that has done is that has prepared us right there to start with our clippers. So now when we go through with our clippers and take an imaginary line straight up in the air, it's going to blend right into the top without leaving a heavy weight line going around that we're going to have to blend out. Before we start the sides, what I've done is I want to comb the front completely out of the way and section it off, because we don't want to cut the front anymore. So now our fade is going to be from the temples back without cutting the front. We're going to take an imaginary line straight up in the air, which is going to blend it to the top without leaving a heavy weight line. So for the blending step, we're going to have very little blending to do. So I'm starting out with my 3.5 metal blade, which cuts the hair to 3/8 of an inch. And basically what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be switching blades one at a time, going down lower. And I'm just going to keep spinning the chair back and forth instead of walking around the chair, because we're going to go through a lot of blades. to get these really close fades, it takes a lot of tools. So our fading motion is straight up and down. If you watch, my wrist does not move at all. The fading motion comes from the elbow. You don't want to do any of the flicking of your wrist, because anytime you do that, you create a weight line or a shelf or some type of line of demarcation that has to be blended out. So throughout the video, keep a close eye, on the haircut, obviously, but if you take a look at my hand and my wrist, it stays in the same position the whole time. So on the other side, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to comb the front out of the way. Now this side's a little more difficult because the hair grows straight forward, so we have to come against the growth pattern or against the grain of the hair. Okay, so that's the 3/8, 3.5 blade. Now what we're going to do is before you put a blade down, you always want to open it up, brush off your clipper, brush off your blade before you pick up the next blade. The next blade is a number 2 blade, which cuts the hair to over 1/4 of an inch. And we have to make sure with each blade we don't go quite as high, otherwise we're gonna cause a line of demarcation. And we're not going to get that fading effect. What causes the fading effect is the distance in between blades. So if my 3.5 finished here, then I want a 2, 1.5, 1A, and then we're going to start working with our adjustable clipper. So we want to make sure to move the clipper in a few different directions to make sure we get all the hair. This hair is extremely thick, so it might not always get it in one direction. You might have to go over it 1 or 2 times. Now by spinning the chair, it increases your efficiency because you save steps around the chair. So if you can increase the quality of your haircuts and the speed of your haircut, it's a winning combination. Especially if your hand speed doesn't increase. Because if you have to do it while increasing your hand speed, then the customer is going to feel rushed. You never want your customer to feel rushed. Especially your fade customers. Your fade customers are going to be the most particular and most involved in their haircuts. Okay, so we're done with the blade. Every time we're done with a blade, we brush it off and we pick up the next shortest blade. So now we're using our 1.5 blade, which cuts the hair to 1/8 of an inch. You see my wrist still isn't moving. Now the 1.5 blade in the metal blade series, again, as I said, it's 1/8 of an inch. It's also I call it a blending blade. It cuts and blends at the same time. So as I'm tapering or fading, I'm going to switch to an underhand grip. I'm going to use the tip of the blade over the comb, and I'm going to just tighten up that blend around the round of the head here. So it's very little blending to do when you start from the top and you work your way down. Okay, so now we're blended and we're going to continue on around the head. So now, where the round part of the head is, as it pushes the heel of the blade, the tip of the blade out, I push the heel of the blade in, if you can see that like that, and then we go take an imaginary line straight up in the air. So I want to finish off a little bit lower than I did with the 2 blade. So each blade You want to finish off a little bit lower. You want to slightly angle your blade away from the head so it's at a little bit of an angle, and that's going to blend it into the higher blade, the longer blade. Also, the shorter your blades get, the shorter your fading motion gets. So instead of an elongated fading motion, it becomes much shorter and much shorter as we work down through our shorter blades. And as we're coming around, we're going to touch up the blending around the round of the head. Okay, blend that right in. So this 1.5 metal blade is really a utility blade. You can do a lot with it. Now there's another term I want you to become familiar with. It's called floating the blade. So as you see me going, it may look like I'm going into the area where I was with the 2 and the 3.5, but if you look sideways, the teeth are not in direct contact with the scalp, and I'm floating the blade through those other areas. And what that's doing is that's causing that fading effect. And then the final thing we're going to do before we take our 1.5 blade off is we're going to complete the blend around the round of the head on the opposite side here. And then I'm going to take the tip of the teeth in this direction. So that's not going to cut length, that's just going to blend. Okay, so our next step down, this was 1/8 of an inch. We're going to go to our 1/16 of an inch blade, which is our 1A blade. First we want to brush off the clipper and the blade. And before I started this haircut, I lubricated all the blades with a clipper spray and disinfectant spray. So before I put the blade on the client's head, I want to make sure that I wipe off all the excess lubricant. And then as I get to the smaller blades, I want to switch to a smaller comb. And now we're going to work our way back around again. So smaller blades, smaller fading motion. I recommend making 2 or 3 passes and then turning the chair. So you're not leaning over too far and then your body becomes out of alignment. You want to stand, when you're doing these fades, you want to stand right in front of your work. Now you see here I'm stretching the skin. There's a little bit of an indentation here. So as you stretch the skin, it pops the hair out and it allows you to get that hair. And a smoother fade. Okay, so we keep spinning the chair. Make sure you got all the hair first. Okay, then we bend the head slightly. Now we're using metal blades, so you want to make sure you hold the ear out of the way. You don't want to catch the back of the ear with the metal blade. Okay, and that completes all our work with the detachable blade clipper. Now we're going to switch to our adjustable blade clipper for the smaller lengths. We're switching to an adjustable clipper, which is the next size down from the 1/16 of an inch. Would be your adjustable clipper in the all the way open position. And I can get 5 different blade lengths out of this. On the side here you can see the 5 different buttons, and that's what we're going to work our way down to really tight around the edges so we can complete our low fade. And as I said before, the shorter the hair, we're going to switch to a smaller comb, which is actually our finishing comb. And I'm using a darker finishing comb because we're working with lighter color hair. So I'm going to open the blade up, and now we're going to use a little bit more of a scooping motion. So now it's not just coming from my elbow, now it's coming from when you get to the shorter portion of the haircut, now it's actually coming from your wrist. So what I like to do is, instead of going all the way around the head form, I go to the back of the ear and then I work through the different blade lengths. Now I'm going to close it halfway in between and not go as high and still use the scooping motion. Now we're going to close it down all the way and not go as high. Now with the detachable blade clipper, we went the same height all the way around. With the adjustable clipper, now we're going to start to dip down with the shape of the head, just below the occipital bone. Using a scooping motion. Now you want to go really slow and let the clipper work. This particular clipper operates at 14,000 strokes per minute. That means that blade goes back and forth 14,000 times per minute. So you want to make sure that you move the clipper slow and you let the blade do the work. If you go too fast with the clipper, you're not giving the blade a chance to work. Because of the speed of the blade, it's going to miss hair or start pushing hair. So now we're going to close it down halfway. And now we're going to close it down all the way. And if we see some dark spots, we can stretch that skin out. Open the blade back up and go over it nice and slow. And if it doesn't get it, we can close it down just a little bit. And you can't see it, but you can hear it cutting. Okay, so we've dipped the blade down, and now we're going to start coming up on the other side. You want to stretch that skin. If you see any dark spots, you want to stretch that skin to lighten the hair up. Sometimes you have to go in different directions. Okay, now we're going to close it halfway in between. A very short scooping motion. And then we're going to close it down all the way. And we're going to clean that up before we come back with our trimmer. And always feel the shape of the head when you're doing these fades. So when you feel that indentation, you really have to stretch that skin to smooth out that fade. So now we're coming up on the other side after we've dipped it down in the back. Around the ear. Close the blade halfway. Stretch the skin. Now close it all the way. If you see any dark spots and you want to go back into the longer area, now we're away from the scooping motion and back to keeping the wrist flat. Okay, also remember to keep your separation in between blades so we have that fading effect. Okay, now we're going to start to come up a little higher on the side. Going to close it halfway down. Pull that ear down. You can see the hair pop out in front of the ear. Never come all the way around the ear with a metal blade. So if that cutting surface touches the back of the ear, you're in danger of cutting the ear. Now we're going to close the clipper all the way. Okay, and once we finish with all that, we're going to use the trimmer on the sides and then finish up with the foil shaver or the beard trimmer. Okay, now we have our trimmer, our T-outliner, and we're going to use that an even shorter stroke, scooping motion around the edges. And you want to be very careful not to go too high or too close to where you've already cut, because then we're going to leave a line. So you want to stay about a ½ inch to an inch below where we left off with our adjustable clipper. And we're going to get it as close as we can, and then we're going to come back with our foil shaver or a beard trimmer to get it even closer around the bottom. So this is a classic low fade. These are the toughest fades to do because you're fading in such a small area, because this client likes to see it darker here and bald down here. So you're fading in a very small area. So it takes a lot of practice and really building your hand dexterity with your tools. Okay, and that's it with the trimmer, and we're going to come back, as I said, with our foil shaver and get that nice and tight around the edges. So for the last step, as you've heard me say many times throughout the haircut, is the foil shaver or beard trim. This is actually a beard trimmer, and it cuts just as close as a straight razor. The proper way to use it is you want to shave down first with the grain of the hair, and then we're going to shave up, so we're actually going to get 2 lengths out of it. So if you think about this fade, we use 5 metal blades. We used 3 different lengths on our adjustable blade, which was so that comes to 8 lengths. We used our trimmer, which is 9, and we're getting 2 lengths out of this. So we're using 11 different lengths on the side to get that nice smooth fade. So again, I'm going to shave down and then I'm going to shave up. Now, just like any other blade, you want to make sure you start lower than where you left off. You don't want to go as high. So when I shave down, I want to start about a ½ an inch lower than I left off with my trimmer. And then when I shave back up, I want to stop about a ½ inch lower where I started shaving down. So again, the distance between each blade is what's going to cause that fading effect, or create the fading effect. And that completes our fade. For the styling portion of the haircut, we're going to use a very small amount of a firm hold gel, and we're going to rub it through his hair right down to the roots, and then we're going to get a hair dryer and dry it straight up in the air, and then we're going to finish it off with a paste before we outline the haircut. We want to use a little bit of gel because it's going to help his hair. As with some of the other models that we've worked with, the hair tends to, and a lot of guys, the hair tends to have such a straightforward growth pattern, it doesn't want to stand up. So we have to get a little something in there first before we use the paste and style it straight up. The next product we're going to use is a thick styling paste. This is going to, and it goes in when the hair is completely dry, and this is going to stand the hair straight up and keep the hair standing up all day. This is after, again, for a quick review, using a firm gel and drying the firm gel to get, what that does is it gives it the volume and gives us the shape, but we need a little bit stronger of a hold to get it to stand up all day. So you want to rub it good in your hands all the way through. And then you want to get it all the way through the hair, right down to the roots. And then in the back, we'll just push it down a little bit where the crown is. And then you want to look in the front here. Okay, and then once we get that standing all straight up, You want to clean your hands off, and then we're going to come back and then we're going to give him a nice outline in the front here and straighten out the hairline and straighten out with a razor and straighten out in the temple area and the arc here just into where we tapered it down to skin. Okay, we've leaned the client's head back slightly. We're going to take our straight edge razor. We're going to stretch the skin down and pull that tight and very lightly shave up to the hairline and get rid of any of those loose hairs. Okay, we're going to do that all the way across the front. Especially in the middle where the widow's peak is. We want to get a nice straight line there. And then in the corners, we're going to stretch the forehead. Now you want to angle the blade slightly if you're using a longer blade so you don't cut into the eyebrows. We're going to shave up a little bit. I don't want to shave off his natural point is there. We want to keep the point. And then we're going to arc it slightly until we run out of hair. And then we're going to do the same thing on the opposite side. So we're going to use our backhand stroke on the opposite side. Okay, and now that our haircut is complete, we're just going to unbutton him and we're going to spin him around, give you a full view of the fade and the style. And if you notice in the back here where it grows in the circle, we've pushed it forward so it doesn't stand straight up.